Anything coming through? That sounds, is that better? Are you getting anything? Okay. All right, why don't we get started? Good afternoon. This is the automated scheduling session. And my name is Shelley Saxer. I'm a professor of law at Pepperdine School of Law in Malibu, California. Just to let you know, I have used technology in the classroom. I'm a big proponent of that. I have used PowerPoint since maybe 1995 or 96. And so with that in mind, I am a faculty member who appreciates technology, wants to use technology. Some of that is because prior to going to law school, I had a career as a systems analyst, project leader, installing mainframe financial systems for an oil company. And so I see very much the helpfulness of technology in doing one's work. I took on the position of Associate Dean Academics for a 3-year term. And I walked into the necessity of scheduling classes, scheduling courses. That was part of my job description. And I said, asked the previous Associate Dean, well, how did you do this? Well, you just kind of do it. And I used an Excel spreadsheet. Okay, so I tried that. I started looking at using Excel. That didn't work for me. I finally, after several false starts, and speaking to previous associate deans who had developed maybe their own little system of doing it, which didn't work for me, I pulled out, I went to Office Depot and got a huge calendar and then took different colored Post-its. Now, does this sound familiar to anybody here? No? Anybody in charge of doing scheduling or have done scheduling? Okay. Have you done it manually?
I have a computer like your calendar, and I just use different color ink on the computer.
On the computer. Okay. I know there's a lot of schools that use big magnetic boards that it takes up an entire office, and then they move the little magnets around. Well, that's what I did with the Post-its, and so I started talking to the IT person who was there as an administrative aide to the staff and administration. And she said, well, we might be able to do that. It sounds a little bit complicated. I went on to the Associate Dean's list and said, does anybody out there use an automated scheduling system? And I didn't get any response. The responses I received were, please let me know if you find one. We're using a magnetic calendar, we're using Post-its, or I don't know how we do it, but somehow we managed to do it. So the IT person went on to the web, onto different websites and found a particular product, SchedulExpert. And that product is designed, maintained by Gary Thompson, who I invited to come here to CALI today. He is a professor of hotel administration, the School of Hotel Administration at Cornell. I don't know why he started doing this. He may want to explain that. But we've worked together on this project. Pepperdine purchased the software. I ran a parallel run to the way I had done it manually to see if I would come out with the same result. It was pretty close, although there's still a lot of manipulation that you have to do because not everything about particular professors can you put into the system. Like this professor doesn't want to teach opposite of the most popular professor because they want to get more people in their class. So those are the kinds of decisions that you can't really document and you can't put those factors in. But we found that you did have a professor preference ability that Gary will talk more about that even gives more control to the professors, to the faculty member, and I think that's a good way to sell it to your faculty if you're an IT person, is to say, now you have even more control over your own schedule because you get to fill out this faculty preference form and say when you want to teach. Of course, for most professors, that's between 10 and 2 o'clock with an hour between classes and only on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And of course, all the other considerations that you don't know about. Gary and I have written an article about course scheduling from both the user perspective, how to do it, and also more generally the software programs that are out there and available to do course scheduling. That's actually going to be published with Franklin Pierce Law Review. It's in the editing process right now. I don't know when we expect it'll come out, maybe this summer, but most likely in the fall sometime. If you need to look at it before then, I'll be happy to send you a draft. We had our last draft in April, and we'll send that on to you via email. It's not a long article. The factors that that the scheduler needs to deal with. Student needs. You want to make sure that you're fulfilling your student needs of the required classes, giving them enough time in between classes if you're dealing with first-year students. The first-year schedule, you want to have the right mix of professors. I know that not all law schools have a heavy female population teaching their first-year classes, so you want to make sure you have enough females, you have enough males. You might even want to have a law and economics professor in one section, that their philosophy is that way, and in another section. You want to make sure your experienced faculty members are not all in one section and your newer faculty members all in one section, because they'll probably outperform the ones who've been there a long time. No. Your popular professors, that's something else. These are hard things to put into a system, so I'm just telling you now that not everything can you automate. But if you can get it to a point where you can tweak it, that's the advantage of using automated scheduling. So you've got student needs, you've got professor needs, which I already talked about, and then you've got resources. Your rooms, how many rooms do you have? How many can those rooms hold? What is the estimated size of those particular classes? These are all factors that you can plug into an automated system. So that's it. And technology and equipment is going to be another need. If not all of your classrooms are equipped for technology, you're going to have to know which professors need the technology, which ones don't, and there's of course classroom preferences that certain professors will have, but they can put that into the system. I'm going to turn it over to Gary to demonstrate that. We also, but before we do that, let me introduce Garnett Knoll, who's from University of Arizona, and she is a support systems analyst there, and at University of Arizona they have developed their own scheduling. So we have a off-the-shelf kind of, I must say that when we dealt with Gary, this is the first time we've actually met. We've been dealing via mostly email for the past 2 years. So we had I had a little bit of problem connecting because I didn't know what he looked like. But we would send him an email one night to say, gee, it'd be nice if the system could do this. And the next morning, I'd come in, and he'd have an updated version of the program. And this would happen consistently. So although, yes, I can say it's off the shelf, there's a lot of tweaking and customization. I don't know how long he's going to be able to continue doing that if he gets a lot more users of his software. But he is certainly responsive to that. So Garnett will talk about their system after Gary talks about the off-the-shelf system. And with that, I'm going to turn the microphone over.
When I started this 6 years ago, it was for a need that we had in the hotel school. Our administrator was spending about a month every semester putting together our course schedule. And we have 800 students or so. We have around 200 courses that are taught each semester. And my background is in optimization. I've done a number of systems for optimization kinds of problems. And he approached me and said, couldn't I help him out? And I said, sure, take a couple weeks. Well, 6 years later and 5,000 hours, this is where it is. And I have been selling the software on the internet for the past 4 years. And during that time, has gone through over 350 upgrades. And what you're going to see today is a lot of the things that Professor Saxer mentioned, where people offer good suggestions. And so I've really worked hard to put in suggestions when they've been good. I have around 40 schools that are using it, used in 40 universities sort of around the world, mainly in the United States. What it's designed to do is automate that scheduling process, and it covers exactly the things that Professor Saxer said, which are facilities, faculty, students, and how students go into courses. So I'm going to show you those four things primarily. Show you a little bit about the facility structure first. You can schedule on multiple campuses. It will factor in travel time between campuses if you've got faculty that are teaching in different places. It will factor in relocation time between buildings if you're lucky enough to have multiple buildings in your school. Within each building, your room structure is the following. So this is I'm going to actually show you data from our school. This is from our fall schedule, since I won't embarrass anybody by showing anything else. This is one of the rooms that we have in our building. It's got 65 seats. You can specify a minimum size class, and so we have an auditorium. You'll see a minimum size for that of probably 100 students, because you wouldn't want to assign a small class to that. Minimum time between courses. How much time does it take to turn over a class? If it's something like a biology lab that needs a prep time, it may take an hour to get ready from one class to the next. If it's a classroom like our auditorium that seats 700 people, it's going to take more than 15 minutes to turn it over. Typical classroom, though, you're going to be able to turn it over in 5 to 10 minutes. Desirability is in here because not all rooms are equal from a desirability perspective. They may have exactly the same characteristics, but some rooms are just better rooms than others. And by giving each room a desirability score on a 1 to 100 scale, the software makes sure that your better rooms are filled with more classes and with larger classes. The attributes, you have to define up front the attributes that are relevant in your environment. But these are the attributes that we use at Cornell. And there are some really odd ones. There's anthropological artifacts. Now, our students probably say that's the faculty, right? But somewhere at Cornell, there's a room that has anthropological artifacts. So basically, you can specify the characteristics that this room has. And so our room 165 has all of the things that's on the right. You can also do things like say when the room's available. So green time indicates that it's available at any time. But you can also make things unavailable. So if you wanted to say, I'm going to schedule faculty meetings Monday evenings from 5 to 11. See, I'm going for administrator role, right? Block that out for faculty meetings from 5 to 11 on Monday evenings. You can also make things yellow time. So in our school, we don't like Friday classes. And so the easiest way to do that is just make that all yellow time on Fridays. And if you do that, the software treats that as undesirable. It will use it if it has to, but will try to avoid it if it possibly can. So that's the information that's in there in each room. So it really allows you to specify pretty precisely what your characteristics are. If I go next to faculty, and I'll look at me, since, again, I won't show anybody else's information. There's a lot of information in here on individual faculty members. Just running through some of the things. Maximum daily free time. That's in there to limit situations where you might teach early in the morning, but then not again till late in the day. And so if you looked at the total free time between my classes, that shouldn't exceed 60 minutes. If you're teaching, if you've got a number of evening courses and you want people to have enough time before they come in and teach the next day, you can specify a time to have between classes overnight. Number of teaching days. You can specify a minimum, maximum, and ideal. Really, if you ask people in our school, most of them are on 2-day schedules, but ideally they'd say, give me 0, right? Who wouldn't want to get paid and not teach? I don't think it's any different in our school probably than in law schools. Really, that's not going to take priority, though, because the minimum and maximum are really system values set by an administrator. The ideal is only going to be relevant if it's within that within that range. The next one here is priority. And this is one that administrators often ask me to hide if I'm showing faculty, because they don't really want faculty members to know that that's in there. Basically what it does, it's a way to say not everybody is equal. You can give people a score on a 1 to 100 scale. It's a multiplier, and so if somebody gets an 80 compared to a 40, they're twice as important in terms of satisfying their requests. Now you can do whatever's consistent with your value system. In our school, I disagree with the associate dean, but he says give everybody 50. So everybody gets 50 in our school. Some places tie it to the performance review. If you're getting a good performance review, you get a higher priority. Other places will give higher priorities to untenured faculty. So again, you can set that priority based on whatever's consistent with your value system. If you're teaching more than one class in a day, you get to specify how you'd like them sequenced within a day. So the indifferent would say, I don't care. Doesn't matter if they're close together. Doesn't matter if they're far apart. Desire would say, I want them close together, preferably in the same room. Room option would say, I want them close together, but only if you can give them to me in the same room. And a pretty common one is to say, I don't want my classes close together. And if you do that, you can specify a minimum acceptable time to have between the courses and an ideal. And the way that's dealt with in the software is that the minimum is a hard constraint. So nobody would ever be scheduled, or this person will not be scheduled with fewer than 30 minutes between their courses, but the software is going to try to give them 60 if it can. For course assignments, you can run it in two ways. Most people use it where they're pre-specifying who teaches each course. And it's for exactly the reasons that Professor Saxer was talking about, where you've got a lot of intangible things that you want to deal with. The balance of skills, the balance of sexual balance between the instructors in your classes, their worldview or whatever. All of those characteristics would argue for pre-assigning people to classes. Another way, though, is that you can say, okay, I've got this class that 5 people could teach it. The software can then pick. If it picks, it does on the basis of their workload, their skill, their preference, and the other things that it's trying to juggle. So you can do it in either of two ways. Most people, again, though, use it with pre-specified faculty. So what this would indicate is that I would be teaching those 2 classes then, if they were offered in the fall, but they're actually spring classes. Availability is similar to what we saw for the room. And what this is saying is that I prefer a Monday, Wednesday schedule. I don't care so much about the time on Monday, Wednesday. I'm flexible for that, but I'd rather not be on a Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. More of our faculty in our school prefer Monday, Wednesday, so not everybody gets satisfied with that. And that's where the idea of setting priorities would be relevant, because that would help the software decide who gets to get satisfied. Now you look at all of this and you say, well, why bother? I mean, there's a lot of stuff here. Why even ask for it? And the reason is faculty have complementary preferences. Some people want to teach in the morning, some people want to teach in the afternoon. Some people want Monday, Wednesday, some people want Tuesday, Thursday. And it's really, some people like their courses close together, some people don't. It's really only by asking for this information and then having a tool that can actually use it that you can raise the satisfaction of the faculty. Because they're doing other things than teach. They're interacting with students, they're writing. And so if you can give them a schedule that facilitates the other things that they're doing, you're going to have a more productive faculty. So that's the information in there on each person. And it is possible, since schools don't have this electronically, it's possible to collect all of this information on the web. And so then people just go on the web, fill this out, and then it's imported directly into the software, so you don't have any data collection, data errors, or the effort involved in manually entering this. If I go next to courses, I'll show you a course that I'm normally will teach. You have to define each section of a course separately. So each time that it's, if you have multiple offerings, each offering has to be defined separately. So if you have different cohorts in your first year law program, each class, a part of those cohorts will be defined separately. The reason is you can have different people teaching them. You may have different constraints on when they're offered, different enrollment between those different sections. And so this is a class that I typically teach in the spring semester, Service Operations Management. Just going through some of the information that's in here, estimated enrollment is 25, and so we want to kind of make sure it's in a room with 25 seats, but you can specify a minimum acceptable room size. So notice here there's an attribute to say it's got to be in a room with at least 22 seats. Now, if that was a class that always filled, if it's part of a core program that's filled every semester, I could say, give me 25 seats. If it's a new class that's taught by somebody new, I might be more flexible to say, well, I'd like 25, but I could get away with 15 because I don't really know whether it's going to draw 25. Workload, that's used in assigning the course to a faculty member, if you're using that. The prep load, it counts course preps, the number of different things people are teaching. Maximum start spread will control whether the course starts at the same time every day. So right now it's 0. If the course met at 8 o'clock one day, it's going to meet at 8 o'clock another day. If we had 60 minutes in here, that would allow it to start as much as 60 minutes difference between the different days that it's taught. I'll show you some of the other information from some other screens. You can have courses that meet for any range of a term. You can have a whole year course. You can have part-term courses. It's real flexible with regard to date ranges. For the attributes, in terms of matching up courses to rooms, this is showing how to do it by attribute. If I wanted to change the characteristics, I might say, well, gee, I really would like it in that room with the anthropological artifacts. And it's desirable also to have air conditioning. And so now notice what shows up is that's a required characteristic. It wouldn't be assigned to a room unless the room had that characteristic. And the air conditioning is desirable. So do it if you can, but it's not a requirement. And then you can also say it's got to be from into a specific room. So for a mock courtroom, class that goes in there has to be in only a specific room perhaps, and you can do it that way. The valid meeting length indicates that this class meets twice a week for 75 minutes, but I can also give the software an option to say perhaps I could let it meet 3 times a week, each for 50 minutes. And then which would it choose? It would choose that based on all the things that it's trying to look at, which is the faculty preference, the facility constraints, and the student issues, which I'm going to get to in just a second. And then you can also be creative in terms of when that course meets. And so if I haven't shown you, but you can define some meeting patterns that say which days a week the courses can meet earlier on. I can override those and say, if I'm going to offer this class twice a week, perhaps it's only on Thursday and Friday. So you can really get very specific in terms of the length, the number, and which day, the length and number of the meetings and which days that the course actually meets. The allowable times, you can identify which times are valid for this course to start. Faculty, and again, we have the same green, yellow, and red characteristics for each course. Now that's for each course. There are multi-course issues, and that's sort of there is a hierarchy of the data. If we go to level 4, one of the most important characteristics of this tool is what I call program groups. Think of these as programs of study, and I'll pick one from our school. This is our master's core courses. These are our master's core courses. Our students will take all of those courses, or whichever ones are offered in the term we're looking at, in the same semester. So the only way that the schedule is going to be valid if there's no conflicts between those courses. So you can define groups like this for, if you've got a group of first-year law students that are taking a set of courses, it just goes in a program group. And that ensures then that when the software schedules the courses, it will do it without conflict. I'll come back to that in just a minute. I'll show you one other thing. We can also do electives. And so, for example, if we take our graduate electives, if I can find them here, here's our graduate electives. We'd like to spread those around. Notice it's not set up to prohibit conflict. There's too many courses to fit in the available time slots. So what we try to do is avoid the conflict if possible. All right, so that's in there. We can define that sort of as an administrative perspective. However, you can also get directly at your students. And what we did in our school for our fall schedule is actually put our list of courses online. Students went online and said, here's the things that I want to take in the fall. That feeds into the scheduler then, and then the schedule is built based on trying to satisfy all of their individual requests. And I'll show you, just for example, an individual student. This is one of my TAs. He goes by Eric. But Eric wanted these 5 classes in the fall. Now, from that information, the software will then analyze that and create new program groups. And so those are student-based program groups. And so basically that's analyzing what the students want to take and looking at the combinations of classes. And so what I want you to focus on, I'm just going to scroll through a couple of them, is the course time conflicts. The priority there is 13.6, 9.09, 29.4, 29.4, 11, 11, 54. What do you think that's based on? Quiz time. Exactly right, number of students that want that particular combination of classes. So it's taking that information that the student said, here's the things we want, creating these groups, and then weighting them appropriately. So the more common the choice, the higher the priority. All right, well that's quickly what the data is. Once that's in, and again, this is all done automatically, so that there's no manual effort. It's all done via the web, and then just the software creates those groups automatically. The point is that you can automatically generate a schedule. This is the interface to the scheduler. You get to set the relative priority on a number of different criteria. In our school, the most important criterion is getting a student-friendly schedule, which is avoiding time conflicts. Yellow time, we don't want courses on Friday afternoons, so that's our second. The third most important is giving faculty members their ideal number of teaching days. So there's a number of criteria. You get to set the importance. Once you do, then you run the scheduler. Now I can take a drink. There's going to be a dancing chart here in a second. All right, and we have 200 courses, give or take, in our school. The software has now generated 200 complete schedules. Those are entire course schedules that vary in some way. Now, the way to read this chart, there is meaning to this, is the legend is in declining order of priority. So the most important criterion to us was the course timing conflict. That's going to show up as the red line. Now, for each of the lines, the initial schedule that the software came up with was normalized to 100 on all of those measures of performance. Lower is better for all of them. And so the way to read this, it's now generated 1,800 schedules. If I look at one that's improved quite a bit here, the purple, that's where faculty are not getting their ideal amount of time between courses. That's now improved by over 85% compared to what it was initially. So we're doing much better in terms of satisfying that. Now, it'll start kicking in shortly on the course timing conflict. But the point when you look at these things is that if you look at the student measures, the room measures, and the faculty measures, all of those lines are tending to move downward. And the point is that the automated scheduler that's in here can find alternatives that are win-win solutions, where it's not just the students that are being satisfied, but we're better satisfying the faculty things that they judge as relevant, we're better utilizing our facility, and we're getting a better student-friendly schedule. So again, notice the course timing conflict, it's been improved by almost 50% compared to what that original schedule was. At the same time that we've improved the faculty member teaching days, the yellow, while we've improved the time between courses for faculty. So it's doing all of these things simultaneously because it's able to explore a number of alternatives. In our school, we just let this run overnight, and it'll generate, it ran 1.4 million schedules. And again, we're taking advantage of that because it's finding the ones that offer these ways of the win-win alternatives. And again, here we are, we've eliminated over 60% of the course conflicts that were there originally. Lots of reporting capabilities, but that's all I can show you in my 20 minutes.
Made with the software was to do this color coding that essentially duplicates the little post-its and the calendar so that faculty or the associate dean in the schedule could actually visualize where those courses work so that faculty could have input, and if necessary, then just take one and move it, and then run it again to see how things would work out. Yes?
And I assume that after it's done analyzing, you can say, okay, I think you found the optimal one. And it generates, like, here's your room. You're Professor Bob, and you're teaching at this room Monday, Tuesday. And
it gives you lots of reports. It tells you what all of the faculty are doing, what's happening in all the rooms. As Professor Saxer said, everything's color-coded, so it'll dump it out either to HTML reports or Excel reports. Every course is color-coded, so you can kind of get a sense of what's happening. You can email faculty their schedules. Take an hour and a half to give you a decent demo of that.
Hi, I'm Garnet Knoll from the University of Arizona, Thank you, and my co-panelist here. We didn't have the option of really going out and purchasing something. We decided to internally develop something because we had other pre-existing applications that really having to switch back and forth between all of these interfaces was going to be really cumbersome. So we decided to actually bring them all together and actually develop something that we could manipulate ourselves. We had full control over, and actually try to get something useful out of it. So I want to give you a little background beyond that. What we did. We have. I'm talking course scheduling in conjunction with room scheduling because at our college they're really closely mixed. Room scheduling before was actually held in a nice little black book that just sat on the administrative secretary's desk, and anytime somebody wanted to reserve a room, they came up, put their name in the book for such and such a time, and that was it. No question of who this person was or whether or not they were permitted to use the room, let alone for classes. If there was class scheduled in there, well, there was a conflict. And then course schedules were actually, put into a word processing file and then converted to HTML and just loaded up onto our web page. So there was no connection between these two things. And so what we did is we took those two ideas, combined them, and made a Cold Fusion application that actually allows multiple people to collaborate on all of this stuff and be able to input the data, what rooms are required for what classes, and be able to have the ability to be able to access that from wherever in the world they happen to be. Because with the black book, that was limited to people actually walking down. I don't know about your professors, but our professors don't necessarily want to walk downstairs to write, that they want a room at a certain time. So this way they could. So things that I want to specifically talk about in our application is how it integrates with our other applications and why we actually decided to build our own. The design and the architecture related to those things, what we learned out of it, and the whole process that was that we took, and where we plan on going. To go a little bit more on our existing applications, we have several applications called Master Calendar, Arizona Law Forums, which is a threaded discussion for students and professors to post materials and everything, and several others. Needless to say, these things all fit together nicely into one application that we call the UA Law application umbrella. The overall design philosophy that we took for this thing was that we wanted to use existing technology that didn't have any learning curve for our users. Whether they be students, staff that had to actually input data for scheduling rooms and classes, and administrators that actually have to manage this stuff. And so again, we decided to opt to use Cold Fusion for this stuff. I'm going to go into a little bit further, demo a little bit further the application that we've developed, and specifically touch on the user interface from both the people that are going to schedule things and from the administrator side. Maintenance of it, management, and the different reporting features of it. specifically in the design, the users have a very simple way of getting into things. We have a, let's say, how can I say this? The users that actually want to schedule a room and class scheduling have a menu bar. They have the find an availability option, find out when there's a particular room available for a class or for any other event. And they have one-click options to be able to book that room. And I'll just take it from here and demo more of what we're going to do. Oops. Okay, from the user's aspect, we could, if they want to go in to actually request a room, they would log on. And if they haven't logged on before, they have the option of registering, and what they want to provide is their name, their email address, their phone number, just basic contact information, because that information is going to be dynamically loaded when they go to request a room or a class for scheduling. Once they log on, they're presented with this thing where they can choose the date that they want to schedule a room. And I'm just going to select today. That's automatically loaded. And you're going to say do it. And it brings up this colored grid of all the rooms that are available at the college and what times we have available for those rooms. And as you can see, there's anything that's in yellow is confirmed reservations, so they cannot have a room during that time. Anything where there's been an already submitted request appears in blue, and anything that has not been requested and that is available, it appears in this kind of light brown color with a blue X. So let's say I want to schedule a room, room 126 at, what is that, 8 o'clock. I would click on this blue X, and it preloads my contact information and asks for what's the name of the event that I want to book for this room. So I can just say, for example, we'll go CALI. Links is any topics or any references to this event that I want to include for them to search. And any specific information I want to include about that event. And then I can say I want this time to start at 8. By clicking on that particular rectangle, we know that it's what the start time is, and we can choose the end time of this event in 5-minute intervals, and we say schedule. Oops. The event type here that it's asking for is, what is this event related to? Is it a conference? Is it a meeting? Is it a class? And such not. And we say do it, and it tells us that that thing has been scheduled. Now, that's the general user interface. From the administrative side, this is what we would see. Logging on, you could have the option of seeing room schedules, being able to do class schedules, or these other various things that are actually part of our integration stuff, which I won't go too much in detail, but I will briefly talk about. In order to really do class scheduling, which I'm sure most of you guys are more interested in here, you have different elements of that class schedule. A class is dependent upon what? A semester. So we want to know information about semesters. You can go in, and what we do is we have an element that allows you to go in and add details about that semester. When is the start date? When does it end? What is the name of it? You know, spring, fall, that kind of stuff, so you can track it. Is there any relevant information about that semester that you want to reference? This feature right here, where it says Publish Class Schedule, is actually part. What we do is when you want to create a class schedule, you can keep it in the background, load all the data that you want, but not necessarily present it to the students yet. When you're ready to display data to the students that this schedule is now ready, you can go into here, edit the semester details on this, and say publish. And what that does is that dynamically publishes that information to the web and tells the students that this semester's course schedule is thus, you know, and gives them all the classes. Now, in order to be helpful for class scheduling, you not only have to know the semester, but who's teaching it. So I'm going to load the semester here, because in order to really publish the schedule, you have to know what semester you're working with. Since you can publish multiple schedules at the same time, you have to select the semester you're going to use. So I'm going to use fall. And then to select the faculty for this thing, you can go in and say, I want to add Professor so-and-so for this semester. He's a visiting professor. He's going to be teaching this thing. I'm not really sure about SchedulExpert, how flexible it is for being able to add new professors and stuff. Do you want to have anything like that? Well, with this, we have gone in and allowed different elements could be added to this so that these things are published on what we call our faculty pages. Any information that a visiting professor could be added, or continuing faculty could be added here, and that's dynamically added to not only the course schedules, linking to course descriptions automatically updates, is automatically referred to their faculty pages. So not only is this a room and class scheduling tool, it automatically updates basically a faculty resume and is dynamically accessible by them clicking on the course scheduling thing to be able to hook up to the descriptions. You can add a faculty member or update them as you needed. I'm not going to go too much into room scheduling. I had planned a little bit more on that, but I think I'm going to keep it pretty simple to class scheduling. But I'll just briefly say that in the room scheduling, you have the ability to go in and modify the parameters of a room as you need to. The name of it, how big the capacity is, does it have any projectors or anything like that. That's going to be a priority for professors in their teaching. You can see existing reservations, and this is important for actually for the associate dean to be able to schedule stuff, because she needs to know what stuff has already been pre-scheduled into a room before the semester even starts. We tried to give we give priority to classes during the room reservation schedule. So if there's anything in there and the associate dean goes in and schedules a class, it trumps whatever was in there, and then the schedule manager for the room can go in and cancel that reservation that was already in there for the class. If a person has scheduled a class, they will have several reporting abilities, and this is important for to be able to make sure that there's no conflict with the class that's already existing. And they will not only, you saw the colored grid, they know a room's available because the associate deans has already gone in there and scheduled the class. If she wants to go in and create a schedule, she can go in and she sees that all of these professors are here. All these professors are here because we've already added them to this faculty area here. We can say we want to schedule this professor in room 122 from 1 p.m. to 2 o'clock p.m. and he's going to teach the entire semester on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And that books it. Now, if we want to see the whole schedule that what we just created, we click on Show Schedule, and it shows, for example, since these ones are already loaded in there, it shows every professor, what class they're teaching, all of the related information about that course, which we've loaded all this course material through this course feature up here, which I won't get into, what time they're available, and where that class is being held. And of course, here's the link to their faculty pages. And this is the stuff that the students see. When we're ready to publish, this information that is already, what you see right here, is what actually is posted onto the web, and it's all automatic. So we have the ability to have the faculty be able to see it at any time, any place. If they, they're on the other side of the world and they go email and say, I really don't want my class schedule at that time, I changed my mind, could you do something about that? You could go in and say, all right, delete this class schedule item, all right, find the class that I don't want, and delete this. And it automatically is taken off of the website for the students. It's not available, so it can be done in like 2 minutes from across the world. So you have the ability to change things as necessary given those faculty demands. I think that's about it. Like I said, without going into the room scheduling portion of it more. Yes.
So the associate dean has to decide first, though, which courses are going to be scheduled at what times for which faculty.
Right. We're working on actually developing. We've only just published this thing in about the last 3 months, so it's really new for us. We're working on future upgrades to actually incorporate all those little minor demands of the faculty members. So right now, yeah, the associate dean does have to go through and actually keep a mental note of, okay, this person has got class priority first, and enter that class scheduling first. Does that answer your question?
Other questions about any of the presentation, comments about scheduling? Yes.
There was the comment we're on the web. What's your web address?
SchedulExpert.com. SchedulExpert.com.
Mine? Yes, it was totally in-house. Because like I said, we had already pre-existing applications that we didn't want to have to switch back and forth between the different programs and be able to publish one locally and then have to turn around and submit it on the web again. So by doing it in-house, we were able to have that flexibility to push that data out as quickly as possible for everybody. It was just a matter of actually asking them. The process for doing all of this stuff involved everybody in the school, right down from the faculty members. What do you want to be able to schedule? How often do you want to be able to schedule things? And so the design of all of this stuff was really tied to everybody, not just the faculty members. It was the people that were going to actually data input everything, and who was going to actually administer all of it.
It's priced. The pricing model is based on a number of starts at 100 courses and then increases in increments of 50 courses. I do have some handouts. I'll put a sales pitch in here. You want to take one, and then I'd be happy to answer any questions either by email.
I don't remember how much we paid because I just don't remember numbers. All I know is that he needs to be charging more.
Well, I am charging more now.
Okay. Because it was, absurd. It's like, even if this thing doesn't work, let's try it. And it has worked. There's now a new associate dean at Pepperdine, and he was able to take that. And that's the advantage if you have the slot that keeps changing, that the next person doesn't have to reinvent. And he used the system, and it had helped that I had done all the input the year before, because that's the biggest chunk. If you do this, somebody has to get it all together, at least with the rooms. With the faculty preferences, it is nice that if you can send it out to the faculty rather than asking them, please send an email as to what you want. They just fill out the forms on the web. Not really. Not really. Yes.
If you want to actually have questions, I can give you information from the director who will be able to help you guys out with that. His name is Mohammed Aziz. he can talk to you about sharing code and stuff like that.
Yes.
Gary, I have two questions. Can you force a conflict? Say I've got a course and it's prerequisite, and I want to get them at the same time slot.
There's a lot of things I didn't show you. You can do things like say certain classes have to be scheduled at the same time as others, that they can't be scheduled at the same time as others, that they can be on the same day, they can be scheduled sequentially. There's a lot of capabilities that I wasn't able to show you.
And have you ever used this to analyze historical data? So, I have no idea what, say, students prefer these four courses together. I don't know what they are.
Well, see, the thing is, part of the problem with using historical data is that you really don't have unconstrained demand. You've got choices based on the things that were available, not what they would have chosen. And that's the nice thing about going to the web is that you get unconstrained demand. You really get at what were their choices. I mean, anecdotally, as a faculty member that, if you have students come and say, well, I really want to take the class, but this other thing is offered at the same time. But those wishes of students can vary from term to term as things become hot and not so hot. So really, the way to go is really to collect those preferences online.
Yeah.
When you look at student preferences, can you allow third-year students' preferences to dominate second year?
Yes, and I didn't show you that, but there's a priority in there on individual students, so you can put the priority on the higher priority of students closer to graduation.
Great.
Can you do that on a per course basis?
That's coming in version 11, where you'll have a number of points to allocate, and you can allocate them however you wish across whatever classes.
I was wondering about the reporting of it. You said there are several reports.
There's over 20 reports.
If I wanted something in particular, like what he was mentioning, can I do any customization of that?
Well, you can, in that there's a number of ways you can customize reports. The underlying database is Access, and so there's a custom report generator in there that if you want to write any structured query language report, it'll dump it out to Excel for you.
Did you find the first time you used it that it was more work to get into the system than the traditional method, but then once it was in there, using it every quarter after that was much easier? Where was the cost benefit?
Yeah, I was really torn, when I was trying to do the scheduling, because by the time I was doing it the third time, when I had worked out a lot of these problems, and it would have been just repeating it, I was saying, gee, what's faster? And so there was a little bit of a trade-off. But I also knew that by building that, and, there's some learning curve, there would be outcomes that we would get. I'd say, wait a minute, why did all these things come together? Well, it's because I hadn't, dealt with a certain parameter. So with the flexibility, there's also a lot of things that you have to check. So there is a learning curve, but I would say once one person in your organization has gone through that the learning curve is going to really diminish, even for people then coming along, because the associate dean, I wasn't involved, I was on sabbatical when he did scheduling. And I know Gary may have worked somewhat with us.
Not very much.
And I didn't hear any great, groans, and he's not a tech person. He is, not that much of it. Right, Phil?
Absolutely.
And so I didn't hear screams about it.
Can I just add? The experience with my users has been that the first time through they don't save any time. The learning curve and just getting the data set up, even if you're using the web data collection, it's going to take about as much time. We went from a month every semester to 3 days. That's having used it a number of terms, but and to get a better schedule. So, but that's something that, the value proposition the first time through is not on the time savings. It's that you're getting a better schedule, you're better able to accommodate all of the constituents that you have.
And we haven't even done it Pepperdine, taking into account students, which, I think is just fabulous. And I've forgotten about that, or maybe it's relatively new. And so I can't believe that. Yeah.
I was wondering about, you're doing course scheduling mainly, but she mentioned, I just want to have a room tomorrow night to have a discussion. Is that built in?
Not really, no, because I've really gone after, there are a number of vendors in that space, okay. And I've kind of gone after something that is not well represented, and people use a variety of alternatives. In-house, sometimes they'll use it on Outlook for scheduling purposes. There's just a number of vendors that offer those alternatives.
But to follow up, say we have yours and this other one, a schedule and then a calendar. Have you ever helped anybody integrate that?
Yeah, there's a huge amount of export capabilities in this software. If once you set the schedule, you just dump it out into your room reservation system.
Yeah, we did some of that setting up the initial courses too. We loaded it from our student registration system. We were able to bring stuff in and dump it right into this program. So we've done some interfacing. Yes?
Have you ever worked with a university that mandates banner for entering and scheduling information?
I'm working with one of the student information system companies. We use Banner, which is really a challenge to get information in. It really depends on the vendor. That as a one-person operation, I've worked really hard to make it easy to get data in and out. I'm starting to get on the radar of student information systems, trying to make connections to Banner, but really, I think it would depend on having a couple joint customers and say, we want this. Because, I'm flexible, but not everybody is.
Inputting.
Right. Yeah. It really is inflexible.
I want to make a really quick comment about the whole thing about including students. One thing about being able to develop by yourself rather than going through a commercial thing is many of you might have access to the main databases that the university uses on the students' class schedules. And with us, we do a lot of downloads of those things for use in like our law forums, for example. We can take those and add those to our room and class scheduling at any time and say, hey, these students are taking these classes without having to ask them. That stuff is automatically downloaded for us on a daily basis. So we would be able to take that at any time without involving them and use that to our advantage for the course of the
The asking, though, was really what do you want to take in the future, not what are you taking now.
Right, but that's what I mean is because they book their classes, some students even up to 3 months in advance.
Right. The point is they can only book them after they've had a schedule put together. I mean, they need to be able to book something based on what's already been put together. This will build the initial schedule based on what their preferences are. So that information, they can't have preferences unless you ask them.
It'd be like that. And that's one of the things that I did as associate dean was to go out and have meetings and a survey with the students when I started saying, when do you want your classes? What's the best time? Do you like it early morning, late afternoon? And so I did that, but it was manually doing that. So this allows, direct student input, where they actually, you might get a bigger response too than a survey.
It gets into curriculum plan and not just schedule.
Yeah, definitely. And it also gives you an idea. I haven't used it yet, but it would also, I'm thinking, wow, this would be great. It would give you an idea if you need to schedule like extra sections of a particular course and, so what would be your faculty selection, etc. Other questions? Yeah.
I guess it's a comment too. So what I think you're saying is you have a window where students register preferences, right, and then generate schedule and then a sign up. So that students have 2 phases. And I guess the other thing is just a comment. I think probably all of us have the same problem, and that is there are certain courses that just are got to be certain times, or like everybody needs to get professional responsibility out of the way. There's 3rd semester, or they all want to get evidence early, and you can kind of make sure that kind of process is facilitated.
Certainly, you can lock things into specific times and days, and by letting students choose a point system for which courses they want, that'll really address that issue in terms of saying which are the real high importance things. So right now, everything's treated equally important.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for coming.